Hey there, I'm Benjamin. Let me tell you about this rough patch I've been hitting lately. It all started one Thursday evening. I was sitting at the kitchen table, just staring at my half-empty Miller Lite, trying to pace myself. I'd grabbed a six-pack, figuring I'd take it easy tonight. Didn't want to be too far gone in case things went sideways. Eventually, the music from upstairs stopped, which meant my wife, Evelyn, was almost ready to head out. See, Thursday nights are usually when she goes out with her friends for one of their bachelorette party hangouts. While she's off with her coworkers, my parents take care of our daughter, Cameron. And me? I usually work late to get a jump on the week's paperwork so I can leave early on Fridays for family time. It was all a finely tuned system, or at least that's how I saw it. My schedule was tight, but I made it work. My parents got precious time with their granddaughter, and Evelyn got her night out to unwind. I thought everything was clicking along just fine. One of those nights, I found myself needing a little extra boost, so I decided to grab a bite at a nearby deli. Sitting there with my sandwich, I was keeping an eye on the door when I spotted a familiar face walk in. I stood up and waved, and Marissa, one of Evelyn's friends, saw me and came over to join me. Now, Marissa was 31, married, and honestly a genuinely nice person. She was one of those rare people who could ease tension in a room without being pushy. With her dark, wavy hair, fair skin, and long legs, Marissa was striking, though she wasn't exactly the bombshell type. Her husband, Daniel, practically worshipped the ground she walked on, and she seemed to feel the same way about him. As she sat across from me, she smiled warmly and thanked me for meeting her. "I know you're a busy guy, Benjamin. I really appreciate you making time," she said, looking right into my eyes. "No problem, Marissa," I replied, though I couldn't help but feel a bit out of place meeting her alone. I have to admit, though, it's strange being here without Evelyn. I usually prefer to have dinner with my wife, but since this is about her, you've got my full attention. Planning a surprise for her birthday next month. Are we? But then I noticed something in her eyes, something sad, that took me by surprise. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to read her expression. Marissa took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I know you and Evelyn love each other. I've seen it myself, and that's why I'm here. What I'm about to say, it might hurt our friendship, but if it saves your marriage, then it's worth it." She paused, glancing down, as if searching for the right words. "There's no easy way to put this, Benjamin, but Evelyn's been seeing someone. It's been going on for a couple of months now." I just stared at her, blindsided. This had to be some kind of joke, a really bad one. "Are you serious, Marissa? You've got to be kidding me." She shook her head, looking genuinely sorry. "I wish I were, Benjamin, but it's true. A few months back, when you started that big project, Evelyn started getting really down. She's been snappy at work, and even when we go out, it's like she's just not there. You know? After a few martinis one night, she finally opened up. She talked about missing you, about feeling, well, neglected. She said she felt like you two had slipped into that middle-aged routine, like you were just another married couple letting life pass you by." Just as Marissa finished speaking, the waiter arrived to take her order. She asked for a Cobb salad and a lemon iced tea, but my mind was miles away, racing with thoughts about Evelyn's secrecy. After 8 years of marriage, I thought I knew my wife, thought we'd be open with each other if something was wrong. We'd always been honest, even when we didn't see eye to eye. I leaned in, voice low and urgent. Did she sleep with him?" Marissa shook her head. "No, not as far as I know. And honestly, your wife's usually pretty open. That's why her behavior threw me off too." She sighed, clearly uncomfortable but pressing on. "Look, Benjamin, there's something else you should know. Every woman I talk to says the same thing about her relationship. They're all overwhelmed by the grind of everyday life. Evelyn brought that up one night and we all sympathized. We reminded her she's beautiful, and that maybe you just needed to pay her a bit more attention." I frowned, confused. "Okay, but what does that have to do with your sister?" I asked, trying to keep my frustration in check. Marissa took a sip of her tea and gave a dry laugh. "Well, my sister Lorraine was there that night. Let's just say she's a little promiscuous." The waiter, still lingering, raised an eyebrow, but Marissa didn't care. She kept going. My parents were both cheaters. I never even knew who started it, but they were always looking to one-up each other. When I was 17, I asked them why they even stayed together, and they looked at me like I was the weird one. Said they loved each other, that's all that mattered. It messed with me, but it had an even worse effect on Lorraine. How so? I asked, now wondering just what kind of influence Marissa's sister might have had on Evelyn. Well, Marissa sighed. Lorraine somehow took away this twisted lesson that cheating's okay as long as you still love each other. I love her, but she's misguided. That night, she told Evelyn that if she wasn't getting the romance she wanted at home, she should look elsewhere. I immediately told her that was ridiculous. But then Isabella and Penelope started chiming in, talking about finding better partners and keeping things private. I think it was just theoretical for them, they're not even married. But even though Evelyn swore she'd never cheat, I'm pretty sure Lorraine's words planted a seed of doubt in her. Why do you say that? I asked, starting to feel a sick uncertainty about Evelyn's faithfulness. Marissa's face softened with sympathy. Well, the following week we were at the Red Horse Bar, and that's when Max Donovan and his team joined us. Evelyn says she didn't invite him, but she happened to mention that our group was meeting up. Usually it's fun when more people join in, but not when Max is around. My stomach twisted as I pressed her for more. Who is this Max? What's his deal? Marissa picked up on the tension in my voice and gave a slight smile, but she answered seriously. Max Donovan is, well, he's the kind of guy who goes after any woman who gives him the time of day, married or not. He's notorious for it. Marissa leaned in closer, her voice dropping. Max is, well, he's got that magnetic pull some people have, but it's not just about looks for him. For him, it's all about the chase. The thrill of seeing if he can get a woman to fall for his attention. Evelyn caught his eye right from the start, but he hadn't actually pursued her until recently. Now he's all in, chasing after her. And instead of shutting him down, she's avoiding him. Everyone at work knows that if Max gets slapped with another harassment claim, he'll be out. Evelyn could easily put a stop to his advances, but she doesn't. They've been spotted chatting together in the cafeteria pretty regularly these last few months. I rubbed my temples, trying to keep calm. Did you talk to her about it? Marissa nodded. Yeah, I tried. She got defensive, saying they're just friends and that Max really listens and understands her problems. I asked her if she'd act that way if you were there watching, and she actually blushed and admitted she wouldn't. Then she got mad, saying you hadn't noticed her much lately. Marissa sighed, shaking her head. I didn't push her after that, but I started watching out for her a bit, making sure she didn't do anything risky. Things seemed to settle down for a while, and I thought maybe everything was back to normal. But then there was this incident 3 weeks ago. As Marissa's salad arrived, she took a bite, and I absently sipped my lemonade, my mind spinning. It baffled me. How could Evelyn think I'd be all right with her flirting like this? I'd never been the jealous type. I loved my wife, trusted her. But hearing this made me wonder if I'd been so caught up in my work that I'd neglected her. I was pushing hard on this project because of a major reward waiting at the end, but maybe I'd gone overboard. Curiosity gnawed at me, but I wasn't sure if I really wanted to hear the details. Marissa's revelations were a lot to process. I felt a slow-burning anger. Evelyn had no excuse for getting so close with Max, but I could almost see her perspective. If I had been more attentive, maybe she wouldn't have looked elsewhere. Still, keeping this from me felt like a lie. I wasn't ready to blow things up over this, though. If she was honest with me and agreed to steer clear of Max, we could work through it. So far, it seemed like things hadn't gone too far, unless something major had happened recently. I leaned forward. All right, Marissa, what happened 3 weeks ago? How bad was it? She looked at me with a mix of sympathy and hesitation. This is where it gets rough, Benjamin. 3 weeks ago, we all went back to the Red Horse Bar for another night of dancing. Max showed up with his buddies, and we were all having a good time. But Evelyn, well, she was drinking more than usual. Max was buying her drinks all night, which really put her over the edge. I went with her to the restroom and realized she was a lot drunker than I'd thought. And when we came out, Marissa hesitated, swallowing hard. She was holding her underwear. Marissa took a deep breath before continuing. Evelyn was holding her underwear in her hand, laughing and saying she wanted to feel liberated. She was nearly plastered, Benjamin. I chalked it up to the booze and helped her back to our table. I tried to talk Isabella and Penelope into helping me get Evelyn back to my place for the night, just so she wouldn't stumble home wasted. But then, I saw her and Max getting way too close on the dance floor. They were practically bumping and grinding, almost like they were acting out some scene. My chest tightened as I listened. "Go on," I urged. Marissa sighed, looking uncomfortable. After the group dancing wrapped up, everything around me faded. I couldn't take my eyes off what was happening between them. I watched her slip her underwear into Max's pocket as the song ended. The whole bar saw it, and people started whistling and cheering as he grinned and pulled her in for a deep kiss. One of Max's friends recorded the entire thing on his phone. I kept hoping Evelyn would snap out of it and push him away, but she didn't. When she finally saw the look on my face, she mumbled an apology. "But, Benjamin." She didn't pull back, not even when people were watching. I felt my jaw drop, a mix of shock and anger freezing me in place. So what did you do?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. Marissa looked down, almost ashamed. I couldn't take it anymore. I got up, excused myself, and locked myself in the restroom. I splashed water on my face and just gripped the sink, trying to calm down. It reminded me of another night, a few months back, when she'd stayed out late and came home around 2:30 a.m. "I remember you told me that night she came back and you too." She trailed off, choosing her words carefully. "You told me how different things felt between you both that night. How passionate she seemed." Her words hit like a gut punch. Memories of that night came flooding back, and I felt an unfamiliar, bitter edge to them now. Rage started to rise, fueled by the possibility that her passion that night wasn't really meant for me. Damn it, I thought, what if she was thinking about him while she was with me? Taking a deep breath, I returned to the table, doing my best to keep a lid on the anger bubbling inside. Marissa watched me, sympathy written all over her face, but I couldn't find the words to respond. My sandwich sat there, untouched. After a few moments, I managed to ask her for more details. "Is there anything else I should know?" "Honestly, Benjamin, that's about it," she said, sounding exhausted. "The last couple of bachelorette parties have been more low-key. We've been hanging out at Isabella's place with some wine and a bit of a lingerie show, but nothing over the top. At work, Evelyn's been keeping her distance from Max, though he's still clearly interested. I thought it might be over between them, but just yesterday, I caught them talking again. They stopped as soon as I walked in, so I'm really not sure what's going on now. But I felt like you needed to know." As the waiter brought the check, I quickly picked it up, fumbling for my wallet. "Maybe I should observe them myself," I suggested, trying to think this through. "She mentioned you ladies are going to the Red Horse Bar again this Thursday. I could just show up, sit back, and watch them from the sidelines. Maybe even make it clear he's being watched." Marissa's face shifted, a flash of concern crossing her eyes. I stopped short, noticing her expression. What did I say?" I asked, suddenly unsure. She hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. "Well, Benjamin, Isabella's got a bit of a temper, and if she thinks you're spying on Evelyn, she might cause a scene." Marissa looked across the table, her face full of concern. "Just so you know, Benjamin, Isabella has a doctor's appointment early Friday morning, and Penelope is visiting her brother in Florida. If Evelyn goes out on Thursday, it won't be with us," she explained, reaching across the table to hold my hand. "I'm so sorry, darling," she added, her voice filled with sympathy. "I know it's better not to ask if you're okay, but here's my home phone number. Call anytime, whether it's to talk to me or Daniel." Her husband was a marriage counselor, so I figured talking with him might actually help. "Thank you for letting me know, Marissa. I know it couldn't have been easy for you to tell me all this, but you're a good friend. No matter what happens next, at least I know the truth, and I can take it from here," I said, grateful for her honesty. I got up from the table, paid the bill, and left. The following day, Wednesday, there was a huge breakthrough on the project I'd been working on. We secured a supply of parts from a startup in Harrisburg that would cut down setup time by 2 months, ensuring we had at least a week's supply despite unreliable transport logistics. With just 2 more calls, we could complete the plan 2 months ahead of schedule, saving the military millions and guaranteeing a hefty bonus for me. This project was the kind of success that could really elevate my career, and I should have been walking on air. But instead, I dreaded going home, knowing I had to face what I'd learned about Evelyn. I decided I needed to look into things myself. While I didn't have access to her work email, where HR could monitor everything anyway, I logged into her old Yahoo account. Nothing suspicious there. She might have another email account, though, which I'd have to check on our home computer. I wasn't tech-savvy enough to set up anything like hidden cameras or voice-activated recorders, but I figured a more direct approach might get me what I needed. I wanted to gather enough information to decide whether to try and salvage our marriage or let it go. Later that evening, Evelyn had already picked up Cameron from my parents' place and asked me to grab Chinese on my way home. When I asked what she wanted, she answered, "After 10 years together, you should know I love Kung Pao chicken." I couldn't help the edge of sarcasm in my voice as I replied, "Just wanted to make sure you're still happy with our arrangement." Right after I hung up, she called back to add an extra egg roll to the order. Usually, I'd be excited to come home early and spend time with my family, but tonight, things felt off. As I glanced at the clock, I realized I hadn't been home this early on a Friday since this project started. I could finally understand how Evelyn might have felt neglected, but that, as I walked through the front door, I spotted Evelyn reaching for a bottle of wine. I paused, momentarily struck by how beautiful she looked. At 31, she was in her prime, 5 feet tall with curves that were undeniably alluring, even in a simple pair of sweatpants. Her hair was tied back in a casual ponytail, and when she turned around, she flashed me that radiant smile that once made me feel like the luckiest man alive. Then reality crashed over me, reminding me of everything Marissa had told me. "I'm so happy you're home, honey. How was work?" she asked, leaning in to give me a kiss. "Pretty good, actually," I replied, doing my best to sound normal. "We made a major breakthrough on supplies, so it looks like we'll finish the project at least a month ahead of schedule." I took a deep breath, wanting to bridge the distance I'd been feeling. "Sweetheart, I know I've been away a lot because of this project. It's tough not being able to talk about the details because it's classified, but I want you to know, no matter what, my top priority is you and Cameron. I'll do whatever it takes to keep our family safe." I held her gaze, trying to read her expression. Did I see a flicker of guilt or maybe even remorse? Or was I just imagining things? She nodded, looking almost emotional. "I understand, darling. We both adore you, and we know it's just temporary. But I'm really glad you acknowledged it," she said, her voice soft and her eyes slightly misty. Was she genuinely moved? Or was she just putting on a show? "So, what does finishing the project early mean for you?" she asked, as she started unpacking the food containers. "Well, for one, it means a decent bonus. I won't know the exact amount until the project's fully approved, but it should be substantial. And on top of that, successfully leading this first government project should attract more high-profile work. If all goes well, I might even be able to negotiate some perks," I said, trying to focus on my food, but my mind was elsewhere. She tilted her head, listening carefully. "Didn't I mention this before?" I asked, trying to gauge her reaction. She shook her head, looking a bit downcast. "Not that I remember, darling. I know you mentioned a big contract you couldn't talk about, but that was it. Since then, it feels like we haven't had much time to really talk." Then, as if flipping a switch, she brightened up. "But it looks like my husband might be back soon, right?" she added with a hopeful smile. I glanced at her, deciding to test the waters. "So, what bar are you ladies heading to tomorrow night? Want me to swing by after work to make sure you all get home safely?" I asked, aiming to keep my tone casual. "Oh, we'll probably just go to the Red Horse Bar for a bit of group dancing," she replied, her eyes shifting down to her orange chicken. "But I think we'll be done before you finish work." My heart sank at her response. Her tone was casual, but the way her gaze dropped was telling. Just then, Cameron finished her egg roll and asked for a bedtime story. I cleared my plate, rinsed it in the sink, and got up, ready to put my daughter to bed. I lifted my sleepy daughter and carried her into the living room, settling in to read her favorite bedtime stories. For the next hour, I read story after story until her eyes finally closed, a soft little snore escaping as she drifted off in my arms. When I looked up, I noticed Evelyn had dozed off too, curled up on the sofa with an open book resting in her lap. Gently, I carried Cameron upstairs to her bedroom, tucked her in, and just stood there for a moment, watching her sleep peacefully. Tears welled up in my eyes as I thought about the days ahead. I wanted her to remember these moments with her parents, not the storm that felt ready to break over us. I wiped my eyes, took a deep breath, and headed back downstairs. Evelyn was still asleep on the sofa, her face softened in slumber. I kissed her forehead and draped a blanket over her, letting her stay warm. Then I went upstairs, determined to find some answers. Her phone was plugged into the wall socket on her nightstand. I unlocked it with a swipe, my heart pounding as I began scrolling through her messages. I told myself it was better to know than to be in the dark. It didn't take long to find the trail of messages I dreaded. I scrolled back, tracing conversations over the past 3 months. My stomach turned as I read. Him. Hey, beautiful. It was fun watching you and the girls dance last night. Her, likewise. Benjamin works late on Thursdays, and his parents watch Cameron, so we had a girls' night out. Each exchange felt like a knife twisting deeper. At first, the messages seemed harmless, almost innocent. But as I read further, a chill ran down my spine. Her, Vicky gave me a talking to today about our lunch breaks. She picked up on everything. Him, I get it. No misunderstandings on my end. Her, yeah, but she asked if Benjamin would be okay with how we've been acting. It got me thinking. Maybe we're sending the wrong message, and I probably shouldn't be venting all my frustrations to another guy. I'll try talking to Benjamin. Him, understood. But if you can't get his attention, you know where to find me. I'll even take you out to dinner just as friends. A knot tightened in my throat. I tried to think back. Had she ever tried to have a serious talk with me? Maybe it was during that whirlwind of deadlines, when I was buried in sourcing materials for the project. I could have missed it. Even so, these messages revealed more than I'd ever seen before. This guy was clearly making a move, and she didn't seem to be stopping him. I kept scrolling, my hands almost trembling, until I found the messages that cut even deeper. Her, you need to return them today. Him, return what? Her. You know what I mean. My friends are furious with me, and I don't blame them. If Benjamin finds out I acted like some floozy, he might leave me. Him. So you don't want me to show him the video? Her, what video? No one at work can see this. Him. Sam was there and he filmed a clip on his phone. I'll make sure he deletes it, but I could barely read further. My heart pounded as I processed each word. There was a video of what? Her face, her behavior, her choices, each realization hit like a hammer. As I read further, the messages between Evelyn and Max only made my chest tighten more with every word. Him, you owe me. Her. Okay, I can't lose Benjamin. Not after last night. Him. What happened last night? Her. It's really none of your business. Him. Was he mad that you came home late and, a bit intoxicated? Her, very funny. No, let's just say something happened that turned everything upside down, and leave it at that. Him. So, a little dirty dancing with me had you begging for your husband's forgiveness? He should thank me for that. Her, you're despicable. Last night was unforgettable because Benjamin and I love each other. Now, give me back my underwear and make sure that video is deleted. I don't need people thinking I'm someone I'm not. Benjamin deserves better. Him, no, he's lucky to have you. But hey, I'm sure he doesn't watch too closely since you go out alone so often. Her, I don't need anyone watching over me. Just be the friend you claim to be and do what I asked, please. Him, sure. Sorry. I'll take care of it, and maybe afterward you can treat me to dinner. Her, just make sure no one sees that video. Then we're even. The messages cut off there, and it seemed they hadn't talked again until last Monday. Him, I heard the bachelorette party's canceled. How about dinner with me instead? Her, not a good idea, sorry. Him, come on. Your husband's at work, and the girls left you alone. Just one night like we used to chat in the cafeteria. You owe me. Her, fine. I'll meet you at the Red Horse at 8. Him, no, let's do TGF at the Sharon Hotel. Great drinks there, and we won't have to deal with drunks. If we drink too much, I'll book a room. Her, all right, but it's just dinner with a few friends. And thank you for making sure that video never got out. It's bad enough that people at work know. Him, don't worry. I saw Sam delete the video myself. Soon, someone else will cause a scandal and this will all blow over. See you at 8. Reading that last exchange, it hit me like a brick. This was the end of my marriage. I couldn't remember the last time Evelyn had dressed up for me, let alone gone out to a fancy bar at a hotel with just a friend. How could she not see the intimacy in what she was doing? I closed the messages, plugged her phone back into the charger, and went to bed alone, staring at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come easily that night. On Thursday evening, Evelyn came down the stairs in her little black dress, the one she usually saved for our special nights out. She looked beautiful, a vision that once would have made my heart race, but tonight, I felt hollow. She paused at the bottom of the stairs, spotting me at the kitchen table. Her expression shifted just slightly when she saw me sitting there. I didn't expect you to be home so early today. Baby, she said, her voice wavering. I looked at her, my voice steady and empty. We need to talk, Evelyn, I said. This might be the most important conversation we'll ever have. Please take a seat. She hesitated, but finally sat down, her face clouded with worry. Evelyn instinctively reached out for my hand like she always did, but I pulled mine back. My voice was steady but cold as I began. I know there won't be a bachelorette party tonight, Evelyn. I know you've been seeing Max Donovan behind my back. Her face went pale. Benjamin, please. Let me explain, she pleaded, but I cut her off, slamming my fist on the table. Damn it. Evelyn, listen to me, I shouted. You don't get to say a word until I've said my piece. She flinched, her eyes filling with tears, but I kept going, unmoved. As I said, I know you kissed that moron during lunch. I know you danced with him at the Red Horse bar, and I know you took off your underwear and slipped it to him after some provocative moves on the dance floor. I know the only reason you came home to me 3 weeks ago like that was because you were all worked up about him. And tonight, I know you were planning to meet him at a hotel restaurant for a little date. What I don't know is whether you've already slept with him, or what would stop you if you haven't yet. I took a deep breath, trying to rein in the anger pulsing through me. You lied to me by omission, Evelyn. You hid Max from me. You lied about that risque little dance, and you lied about going out with the girls. Frankly, I'm exhausted. My trust in you is completely shattered, and I'm not even sure I want to try to salvage this marriage anymore. But it's clear from your actions that you don't seem invested in it either. I held up a finger. So here are your options. Option 1. You walk out that door tonight, go meet your boyfriend, and let him keep feeding you drinks and compliments. Even if you don't sleep with him, if you walk out that door, our marriage is over. I will not be interested in trying to save it after that. I raised a second finger. Option 2. You stay here tonight and we talk. You try to convince me why I should even consider working on this marriage. I'll be honest, it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to persuade me of anything because, right now, I don't believe a word that comes out of your mouth. But maybe, just maybe, you'll say something that makes me believe you care. And since we have a child together, I'd say there's a 50% chance I'll be willing to try. Finally, I raised a third finger. Option 3. You take me with you tonight, and we confront Max together. You tell him, in front of me, that he's never to speak to you or contact you again. Then, you give me at least 15 minutes to talk to him alone. This option would show me the most respect. And if you really haven't slept with him, it's the only chance for us to save this marriage. If you can face him and end it in front of me, I promise I'll be 100% committed to trying to make this work. I folded my arms and looked at her, holding her gaze steady. So, Evelyn, it's your choice. Option 1, 2, or 3. The silence that followed was crushing. Evelyn's face was pale, her eyes wide with fear and regret. She looked like she might be sick, and I could see her fighting to hold back the tears as she finally whispered, "Benjamin, I'm so sorry." She looked down, ashamed, her hands trembling as she clutched the phone. "About everything. I know I messed up. I really need to talk to you," she murmured. "If we go see him, who's going to lead the conversation? You or me?" Her question caught me off guard. I'd expected her to choose staying home to talk things through, maybe try to justify herself. Agreeing to confront him directly was a step in the right direction, though it was nowhere near enough. I grabbed the keys and we headed for the car. Out of habit, I opened the door for her, and she nearly broke down in tears. As I pulled out onto the road, she glanced at me, her voice barely a whisper. "I really ruined everything for us, didn't I?" she asked, her voice thick with regret. "Yes, Evelyn, you really did," I replied, keeping my eyes on the road. She took a shaky breath. "What can I do to fix this?" I paused, taking a moment to gather my thoughts. "First and foremost, complete honesty from now on," I said firmly. "I shouldn't have to say this, but clearly, you thought it was okay to omit things I had every right to know or to lie outright. That ends here. You need to make me believe what you say. Somehow, I wasn't the one who broke our trust, you were. So if we have any chance of moving forward, it's on you to rebuild it." She nodded, swallowing hard. "Second," I continued, "he's dead to you. If we stay together, there will be no more contact. No chatting at work, no friendly texts, nothing. If he shows up at a bar, you leave. If you can't leave, you call me immediately. No drinks, no gifts, no communication at all. Is that clear?" "Yes," she whispered, her face pale. "When we get home tonight, you're going to tell me everything. I don't need you analyzing how I was wrapped up in work. I know I was absorbed in this project, and I'll take my share of responsibility if you resented that. But you need to be honest about every decision you made. And lastly, I want you to schedule marriage counseling. If you'd rather choose the counselor yourself, go ahead. Maybe even Daniel can recommend someone." As I finished talking, her phone chimed with a new message. She glanced down, her face paling even more. "It's him," she murmured, "wondering where I am." "Give me the phone," I said, reaching out. She handed it over without hesitation. I scrolled through the messages from today. The exchange was clear as day. Him: "Hey, I booked a room with a jacuzzi. Maybe we can relax after lunch. Bring your bikini." Her: "You couldn't get me drunk enough to take a hot bath with you. I'm not bringing the bikini." Him: "We'll see. You know what happens when you drink. Maybe you won't need the bikini." And then, just now. Him: "Where are you?" "While I'm waiting, I had a glass of wine." Her: "Running a little late. I have a surprise for you." Him: "Oh, you brought your bikini. Perfect." I handed the phone back to her, the weight of her actions hanging thick in the air. She looked down at the messages, her face full of shame, and her shoulders slumped. "You realize these messages don't exactly help your case, right? Just today's texts make it look like you were planning to hook up with him tonight. How much worse would it look if I kept scrolling?" I asked, knowing I'd already seen more than enough. She hung her head, her hands clenched around the phone. "Evelyn, do you even see this as inappropriate? Can you grasp how these conversations, these little flirtations, have chipped away at our marriage?" She sobbed quietly beside me, her face full of regret. "Benjamin, I swear, I only planned to have dinner tonight. I never intended to sleep with him." I let out a scoff, unable to hold back. "Right? Just like you didn't plan on taking your underwear off and giving it to him a few weeks ago." I could see her pale even further, and her gaze dropped to her lap. "Evelyn, we're almost there. You might want to fix your makeup and think carefully about what you're going to say to Max. And I'd avoid ordering any wine," I added with a pointed look. She pulled down the visor and took a napkin from the glove compartment, dabbing at her face, trying to steady herself. After a few minutes, she took a deep breath and spoke more calmly. "Benjamin, I understand why you think Max was just toying with me. Hearing it from you, I can see it now. But how did I not see this? I'm not some naive girl. I fended off men far more attractive and sophisticated than Max. Why did I let him get close? That's exactly why I find it hard to believe you now, Evelyn. You're a beautiful, intelligent woman who should have seen right through his act. Which makes me wonder, did you go along with it willingly? I let the question hang in the air. Imagine if I'd picked up a woman at a bar, then lied to you about having dinner with her tonight. You'd be furious. She looked down, her face a mix of shame and determination. You're right. I messed up, and now I have to find a way to fix it. Thank you for even giving me a chance. She leaned in as if to kiss me, but I turned my head, letting her only graze my cheek. I'm not over this. Not even close, I said firmly. She pulled back, her expression a little shocked. We were always affectionate, and this distance between us was hitting her hard. Hopefully, we can get back to that, she murmured softly. As we neared the restaurant, she glanced at me, nervous. What should I say to him? I parked and shut off the engine, letting a moment of silence hang between us. What do I want you to tell him? Evelyn, our relationship is barely hanging on because of your choices with this idiot. You've jeopardized everything, even how our daughter could end up spending Thanksgiving with one of us and Christmas with the other. I want to make this perfectly clear, so tell him whatever you want. She sat there, absorbing my words, then let out a resigned sigh as she opened the car door. As we walked toward the hotel restaurant, she hesitated, reaching for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't return her touch either. Inside, a red-haired hostess greeted us with a warm smile. Table for two? Evelyn cut in, her voice tense. We're meeting someone who's already here. The hostess nodded, suggesting we take a look around. Evelyn scanned the room, then nudged me and pointed toward the back. Near the hotel door sat Max, his eyes glued to his phone, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. With determined steps, Evelyn approached the table and stopped without sitting down. Max looked up, flashing her a broad smile that quickly faded as he noticed me standing just behind her. Max, this is my husband, Benjamin Montgomery, she began, her voice steady but cold. He's concerned about our relationship, and after talking with him, I have to agree. For the first time in our marriage, I've given him reason to doubt my fidelity, and I'll work hard to repair the trust one damaged because of my relationship with you. From now on, I want nothing to do with you. There's no reason for you to call, text, or otherwise contact me. Max shifted uncomfortably, his confident demeanor slipping. I accept responsibility for letting things go this far, and now I'm ending it. Evelyn continued, her tone unwavering. My husband knows about my actions at the Red Horse Bar, and I'm committed to fixing things with him. Tomorrow, I'll inform HR about the situation and make it clear that any attempt to engage me in non-work-related conversation will be unwelcome. I'll be at the bar while my husband talks to you. She turned, but before leaving, she leaned in, kissed me lightly on the cheek, and whispered, I'm truly sorry. I watched her walk away, feeling a conflicted mix of relief and lingering anger. Turning back, I took a seat across from Max, sizing him up. He had dark hair, a slender build, and was dressed meticulously. Maybe he was attractive by some standards, though I couldn't tell for sure. His gaze lingered on the glass of wine he'd clearly ordered for her. I took a steady breath, determined to handle this without losing my temper. So, Max, I began, my voice steady, thought you'd surprise her with a jacuzzi and a bikini tonight. Did you? I gave him a half-smile. You honestly think she told you everything? He smirked back, trying to look unfazed. But now that he was in front of me, I felt a sense of control. Actually, yes, I replied calmly. I've known Evelyn for 10 years and been married to her for 8. I'd say I understand her better than some guy who's been hanging around her for 3 months. I kept my smile as a waiter approached, asking for my drink order. Double Johnny Walker Black on the rocks, I said. Max tried to keep his smug grin, but his eyes shifted back to the glass of wine he'd ordered for Evelyn. She certainly knows how to please a man, he muttered, attempting to provoke me. Oh, no doubt, I replied, grinning just as broadly, but I don't think you're speaking from experience, are you? He laughed uncomfortably, forcing a smile. I mean, I'd need photographs, wouldn't I? He quipped, trying to sound casual. But I didn't miss the look in his eyes. I leaned in, my gaze locking on his. You don't have photographs, Max, and if she'd actually gone that far with you, you wouldn't need to slip anything in her drink. His face blanched slightly, his smirk fading. What are wannabe predators using these days anyway? GHB? Rohypnol? The shock on his face was unmistakable, confirming what I'd suspected. He flinched as I leaned even closer, my fury barely contained. You despicable coward, I growled, my voice low. I should lay you out right here and now. But I'm not going to. End up in jail? I said, leaning back in my chair. That's not going to happen. I gave my wife 3 options, and now I'm giving you 3 options. I jabbed a finger just under his nose, each word dripping with contempt. First option, I said, you get up right now, go apologize to my wife, and tomorrow you resign from your job. After that, you leave the city. If you do all that, I promise not to pursue you. I raised another finger. Second option, you go to the police, confess to spiking my wife's drink, serve your sentence, and stay away from her forever. I'll keep an eye on you but won't come after you personally. But afterward, you leave the city. I raised a third finger, my voice turning even colder. Third option, we sign up for a boxing gym. For weeks from now, you and I step into the ring, sign injury waivers, and we don't leave until one of us passes out. When you wake up, you leave my wife alone. And then, guess what, you leave the city. Just then, the waiter set my scotch down in front of me. I took a long sip, feeling the burn as I kept my gaze locked on Max. Max sneered, but I could see the uncertainty flicker in his eyes. You must think I'm a fool. Why would I agree to any of these options? I gave him a slow, menacing grin. Because, Max, you don't want to spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering when I'll show up to settle this. Every time you walk to your car, you'll wonder if I, or maybe one of my friends, is lurking, ready to snap your legs and crush your manhood with a bat. Every time you answer the door, you won't know if we'll be barging in to tie you up and make sure you can't hurt anyone else. Every time you go to a bar, you'll wonder if one of my pals has spiked your drink, leaving you helpless for whatever happens next. Max's smirk vanished, but he spat back defiantly. Your wife claimed otherwise after I had my way with her last night. His smugness reignited my rage. I took another sip of whiskey, keeping my cool, and discreetly activated the voice recorder on my phone, hoping to catch every word. So you were planning to spike her drink and take advantage of her? You're willing to gamble on me not making your life a living hell. He seemed to falter, but his bravado slipped back into place. The stuff was just to get her in the mood for when my friends showed up. We were planning to have our way with her tonight. The last thread of my composure snapped. I lunged across the table, grabbing him by the collar with one hand and yanking him close. Despite the awkward angle, I managed to land a solid punch, feeling his nose crunch under my fist. Max yelped, clutching his face, his eyes wild with pain and panic. You'll regret this, he shrieked, blood streaming from his nose. I'm calling the cops. I laughed right in his face. Go ahead. I'd love to see them analyze that wine and listen to this tape of you confessing. Within minutes, the police arrived, apparently called by nearby patrons who'd seen the scuffle. 2 officers took my statement, collected the wine glass for testing, and when they searched Max, they found a packet of suspicious white powder in his pocket. He demanded a lawyer immediately, refusing to speak further, his arrogance now reduced to silence. The officers listened to my recording, then confiscated my phone as evidence. Though parts of the audio were garbled, it was clear enough to catch Max discussing slipping something into a drink and his plans for an assault. It wasn't until nearly 4 a.m. that Evelyn and I were finally allowed to leave the police station, exhausted after giving our statements. One of the officers even praised me for stepping in to prevent a likely assault, which left Evelyn visibly shaken. By the end of it, she was a mess, and Max was being held in custody. Using Evelyn's phone, we quickly called my parents to explain the situation. They understood immediately and promised to take care of Cameron, planning to take her to the zoo to keep her mind off things. When we finally pulled into the garage and shut off the car, we exchanged a long, weary glance. Evelyn unbuckled her seatbelt, reached across the console, and hugged me tightly. I let her cry on my shoulder for a minute, holding her until I gently pushed her back. "Evelyn, we still need to talk," I said, my voice soft but firm. "But it's late. We should get some rest and tackle this with a clear mind tomorrow. Let's both go to work, and afterward we'll spend the day sorting things out. Sound good?" "Yes, Benjamin," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Getting into bed sounds wonderful. May I please sleep beside you?" "Of course, baby," I replied, giving her a reassuring nod. The next morning, I woke up and pulled her closer, reflecting on everything that had happened the night before. There was a faint glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could turn out okay. But I knew there was a lot to unpack before we could even consider moving forward. My hand rested on her stomach, and she brought it up to her chest, a small gesture that stirred up a whirlwind of emotions in me. But I knew we needed to take things slow. I sat up and playfully smacked her backside. "Come on, get up. Let's go for a walk." "I don't want to have a serious conversation on an empty stomach," I suggested. We ended up showering together, though it did little more than help us get ready faster. Despite the closeness, I knew I wasn't ready for intimacy until we resolved the mountain of issues between us. We decided on breakfast at the International House of Pancakes, where we kept the conversation light, chatting about Cameron and her upcoming day with my parents. For now, we focused on neutral topics, steering clear of last night's heavy revelations. After finishing our coffee and settling the bill, we returned home, ready to finally face each other. We sat down at the kitchen table, and I took a deep breath, breaking the silence. "Okay, I'll start. You've seen firsthand the kind of person Max is, so there's no need to dwell on that." I paused, steadying myself. "He claimed you, satisfied him, and had the nerve to call me a teddy bear after supposedly sleeping with you a few days ago. Is there any truth to that?" "No," she said immediately, her voice steady but pained. "The worst encounter I had with him was that humiliating night at the Red Horse. I know I messed up, Benjamin, but I never went further." I nodded, but the doubt lingered. "How can I believe you, Evelyn? You lied about your plans last night. You left out what really happened at the bar. And you hid your whole relationship with him." I leaned forward, my tone leaving no room for excuses. "It's time to be fully transparent, Evelyn. I need to know everything." I looked at her, processing everything, and she continued, her voice low but steady. "I have a suggestion. What if I take a polygraph test?" "A lie detector test?" I asked, surprised. She nodded earnestly. "Yes, schedule one. Ask me anything you need to know, any question at all. Just tell me the time and place." Her sincerity caught me off guard. "I know these tests aren't foolproof, but if it helps bring out the truth, it might be worth a shot. I'll look into it." "It could take some time to set up," I replied, managing a small smile. "But it's a good starting point. We'll go over the details later, after we address what's most important." I paused, gathering my thoughts for what I needed to say next. "This next question is the toughest for me, Evelyn. It's the one thing that hurt me the most. It's hard to imagine a future together until I understand it fully." I took a breath. "The underwear incident. Well, that embarrassed you, and I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. And I can deal with the fact that you grew close to another guy, assuming you genuinely thought it was just a friendship. What's harder to accept, what made me want to walk away, was that you lied. You told me you were out with the girls when, in reality, you were meeting him. That lie cut deeper than anything else." Tears filled her eyes, and she looked at me, clearly struggling to find the right words. "Benjamin, I can only try to explain where I was coming from," she began, her voice trembling. "First, I need you to know how deeply sorry I am for lying to you about it all." She looked down, seeming almost ashamed. "When you took on that big project, it was the first time in our relationship that I felt like I wasn't a priority. I'm not blaming you or your work. I know why you took it on and how important it was to you." She paused, her voice breaking slightly. "But I started feeling lonely and, well, neglected. I didn't realize it at first, but those feelings built up over time. Marissa's sister made a comment one night. It stuck with me. She suggested that maybe, if my husband was so busy, I should try finding romance elsewhere. I didn't think of it as cheating. I thought maybe I could find that attention I needed, just temporarily. Then Max came along, and before I even realized it, he was making me feel special. He asked about my day, my family, my interests. He made me feel seen. She exhaled heavily, watching my face closely as I worked to keep my emotions in check. When Marissa confronted me that day at lunch, I had a wake-up call, she said, her voice softening. I realized what I was doing. I was using Max to fill this emptiness I felt. She shook her head, shame flickering across her face. But despite all that, I wanted to work things out with you. I didn't know how to get us back to where we were, but I wanted to try. She hesitated, then looked away, remembering. That night at the Red Horse, things got completely out of hand. I swear I didn't invite Max or his friends. They showed up before my friends even got there. Max kept buying me drinks, and before I knew it, I was more intoxicated than I'd ever been. I made horrible choices, and that night is one I'll regret forever. She looked back at me, her voice choked with emotion. But afterward, when I came home, we had an incredible night together, Benjamin. And it left me more confused than ever. How could I act so recklessly with him, and then come home to you, feeling that connection we shared? She got up to pour herself a glass of water, taking a long sip before sitting back down. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her eyes held mine, desperate for me to understand. Evelyn continued, her voice trembling. When the video surfaced, I knew you'd be furious, and rightfully so. If you got drunk and kissed another woman, I'd be devastated too. And after our night together, I realized you'd be left wondering if I was thinking of someone else. So, in a moment of panic, I made another mistake. I involved Max to help cover it up. He probably encouraged it, and I felt like I owed him something. When my friends canceled on our dinner plans, he offered to go with me. I was feeling lonely and thought you'd be home late, so I let my guard down. I'm truly sorry for all of it, Benjamin. Our relationship has always been built on trust, and I shattered that. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she didn't break down entirely. Oh my God, I whispered, feeling a mix of relief and hurt. I stood up, pulling her into an embrace and kissing her softly before stepping back. We're not there yet, I said, and it's going to take time. But if you're fully committed, so am I. Evelyn and I committed to counseling, which helped us work through the pain and missteps we'd both experienced. The process wasn't easy, but talking openly about everything helped me move past a lot of the resentment I'd felt. One of the most important lessons for us was that communication had always been a strength, something we were determined to rebuild and make even stronger. The counselor suggested Evelyn undergo testing for possible hormonal imbalances, which, while it seemed premature at her age, ended up revealing a few issues. After some adjustments and switching birth control, she felt a noticeable improvement. Though things didn't go back to exactly how they'd been before, we were moving toward a better place. The polygraph test confirmed her honesty on the hardest questions I'd asked. I still have reservations about the test's reliability, but the results, combined with her openness, gave me some peace of mind. In the spirit of renewal, I signed up for boxing lessons, and Evelyn decided to join self-defense classes. Thursday nights became self-defense night for her, and eventually, she convinced me to join her for martial arts classes. I quickly discovered she excelled at it while I struggled to keep up, but sparring turned into a light-hearted form of connection, and sometimes even a playful prelude to intimacy. On the professional front, the project was a major success, completed 6 weeks ahead of schedule and under budget, which put my company in the running with top players in government contracts. They offered me a promotion to vice president, but I declined due to the extensive travel requirements. Instead, I proposed creating and leading a special projects department. It came with its own perks, including a new office and an assistant who keeps everything running smoothly. She's professional and incredibly capable, and so far, there haven't been any complaints from my wife or anyone else at work about our arrangement. The $388,000 bonus from the project went mostly toward Cameron's college fund, but I set aside enough for an all-inclusive, week-long resort vacation with Evelyn. My parents are excited to take care of Cameron while we're away. I did face an assault charge from the altercation with Max, but the circumstances, combined with the evidence, worked in my favor. The charges were eventually dropped and Max left the company, and the city soon after. We're still working on us, and it's not perfect, but we're getting closer every day. Punching Max did result in an assault charge, and while I was sentenced to 40 hours of community service and a $300 fine, it was the most satisfying penalty I've ever paid. Meanwhile, Max received a much harsher sentence, 3 to 5 years for attempted assault and possession of a controlled substance. Ironically, not long after his sentencing, he was assaulted himself while walking to his car. It turned out the attacker was a brother of one of Max's previous victims, and while the guy will serve 2 to 3 years for the attack, I can't say I felt much sympathy for Max. Every month, I deposit $50 into Max's prison commissary account. A small reminder that even from a distance, I'm keeping an eye on him.